Hi guys, Kaylee with Kaylee's Canvases here. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this cute scarecrow. This is my Happy Scarecrow kit, and if you purchase this kit, it came with some stuff. Alright, so this kit we have our pre-drawn canvas. Alright, this will help make it a little bit easier, so we don't have to focus so much about proportion. We can worry about blending and making it look really cute. We also, the kit came with 2 paintbrushes, one flat and one fine liner. Alright, it came with paper towel, paper plate for mixing if you need to mix, but you might not. Alright, and then we have all of our different colors of paints that we're going to need to create this. Alright, I also have with me a blow dryer for quick drying. Alright, because sometimes it stinks having to wait until your picture dries to go on to a next step. So I'm going to take you through this step by step. Alright, and I'm just going to put this up here for reference. I got my picture, you can't see it, but I've got it here so I can look at it for reference. Alright, because it's always good to have a reference picture, so in your kit you should have a reference picture as well. Alright, but if not, you can just follow along step by step. Alright, so we are going to start off by painting using our flat brush to paint the background of the canvas gray. Alright, so I'm going to get my brush wet because it's completely dry because I haven't used it in a little while. So it's completely dry, I'm getting it wet, and I just very lightly got rid of some of the water that was on it. If you look at the paintbrush, one of the things that you might notice if you, the reason that I dry my paintbrush off after I put it in the water, I just want to get it damp. But I want to dry it off because I want to eliminate, sometimes water will bead up on this metal part of the brush, and when you're painting it'll drip down onto your painting. So I want to eliminate that. I just want my brush slightly damp. Alright, I don't want water dripping all over my painting and making my paint runny. Alright, so I am getting my brush wet, but I'm making sure to get rid of any of that water that's on the metal part of my brush. Alright, so I've got all my paint here in the cups. I personally recommend leaving it in the cups. It makes it a little easier, a little less messy. I don't like messy, although I do get messy quite often, as you can tell from my hands. I was painting earlier today. Alright, but we're going to start off by painting a gray background, and I always like to do the sides of the canvas too. So that's one thing you'll notice, that when I paint I do the sides because it makes it look a little bit more professional. Alright, so we are going to paint the canvas, and some of the paint we might, depending on the color, we might have to do a second layer. You always want to make sure your paint is dry in between each layer. Alright, and we're just going to paint this gray around the scarecrow. Now if we go a little bit over the lines, that's okay. Alright, we're just trying to get the basic general shape. Okay, so we're just going to take our time, we're not in a rush. Alright, we're going to have some fun painting this happy scarecrow. I think he's really cute. Alright, when I paint, a lot of times I will paint from left to right because I like to set my hand on the canvas, my hand or my arm on the canvas, and use it for stability, and I don't want to get my hand in the paint, although I do that quite often, but it's just a little tip. So I'm just painting the sides of my canvas. Alright. This part can take a little bit of time because we've got a good amount of surface to cover with the background, but I didn't want to give you too big of a brush because we have some good sized nooks and crannies that we got to fit into. So if I had given you too big of a brush, you might not have been able to get into those little nooks and crannies, like right along here, or even like underneath this hat. Alright, and we want to get as close as we can to the lines, but if we go over, it's okay. Alright, And don't worry if it looks streaky. We will add a second layer if need be. You probably received more paint in your kit than what you needed, but I had to do that in order to make sure that your paint was fresh. What happens is if I don't fill the paint cups enough, it will allow too much air in the containers and it will dry out your paint quicker. So that's why I try to fill up the cups all the way to the top if I can. I don't want to fill it too much because then they could explode on you when you try to open them. It can be a little bit messy, but I try to make sure. See, I'm going over the lines a little bit. That's okay. But anyways, you're gonna have enough paint where if you wanted to try this painting again on a piece of paper or another canvas, you'll probably have enough paint to do too. Possibly. But if you're wondering why you have so much paint, that's the reason why. Oops. I went a little bit over his face, and that's okay. All right. When this is dry and we paint over it, you won't even notice. All right, I'm just painting everything gray. If you hear any noise in the background, that is probably my son playing a game. I've asked him to be quiet, but I don't think he knows the concept. He's playing Mario. I'm just painting the sides of my canvas. You don't have to do this. I just like it to look professional because I want to make sure I give my all in anything that I do. So take your time. Make it look good. You know, if you rush through it, a lot of times you'll make mistakes and wish you hadn't. Right, I'm painting right up to the lines. If you go over a little bit, it's okay. Alright, so I'm just about done with the background, with the first layer of the background. I'm set my brush in the water. I'm going to blow dry this. So now there's a couple things I could do. If you don't have a blow dryer handy, that is quite alright. You can either let it air dry by itself, which takes some patience, but it'll probably just take about a half an hour to air dry. Because you want to definitely make sure it's dry before you add the second layer, or else it's going to kind of pull some of that wet paint and you're going to have a really streaky painting. So definitely wait for it to dry. The second thing that you could do if you don't have a blow dryer is you can take a piece of paper and kind of just fan it on top of your painting, over top of your painting. You don't want to touch it because you don't want to smear the paint, but you could just go like this and that will probably dry your paint in about 10 minutes. Alright, but I'm not going to do that. Alright, I'm going to use my blow dryer for speed. Alright, so if at any point during this video, if you need to wait for your paint to dry, feel free to pause this and pick up where you left off. If I'm going too fast for you, pause it and then play it again when you get to the point where you want to be at. But I'm going to blow dry this. Alright, so don't mind the noise. This will really only take a minute. You might even be able to see the paint dry right on the video, which is always kind of cool. And you want to definitely make sure that your background is completely dry before you start your second coat. Still a few wet spots, so I'm just going to get those. Alright, so my paint is dry. I'm going to add my second layer. I'm rinsing my brush off because I set it in the water, but I'm going to dry it off completely. Alright, because we don't want to get water in this because it might make it streaky. Alright, so, oops, sorry. So now we're going to just do another thin layer of paint. We don't need to do a thick layer, just another quick thin layer of paint, just to get some of that streakiness out where our paint might not have fully covered. And this part won't take too long. Right, it's starting to look pretty good. Oh, the background anyways. We're almost done with the background. And then we'll give it a quick dry. It doesn't have to be dry, but it'll be good because then you'll get to see if you missed any spots. Sometimes when the paint's wet, you can't really tell if you missed anything until after it dries. I like this Scarecrow. He reminds me of the Scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz. Looks a little different, but he reminds me of that Scarecrow because Scarecrows were originally intended to be scary. But this Scarecrow, he's happy. And the Scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz was happy too. So that's why I like him. There's enough scary stuff in this world. I don't need my Scarecrow to be scary. But you can make him scary if you want to. Alright, so I think we have pretty much finished up the background. I'm going to just blow dry this again real quick. This one won't take as long. We've got a mostly dry, nice solid background. Alright, it looks a little rough around the lines on the Scarecrow, but that's okay. We are going to paint the Scarecrow's face and shirt next. Alright, so for this we're going to use the tan paint. Alright, and you want to kind of go around the eyes and the nose, but for the most part, it's okay if you overlap anything a little bit. And this is where you'll notice that as you paint, you'll notice that those lines where you overlap, like we overlapped a little bit over here, but you'll see it'll go away. Okay. See? Can't even tell we made a boo-boo. Alright, I'm going to go across here. Now, as I paint, I'm going to go around the eyes and the nose, but I'm covering up the mouth. That's okay. It just kind of gave us a general idea of where the mouth should go and what it should look like. Alright. And we'll probably lose the eyelashes too, but that's okay. I'm just going to paint all around it. Smooth it out so it's a nice thin layer. The tan paint kind of has a nice coating, so we won't have to do a second layer of the tan paint, which I am happy about. Alright, So go ahead, keep going around the eyes and the nose. All right. All right, take your time when you're going around the eyes and the nose. That way you don't lose your lines. All right. And now we will do the shirt. I'm going to start over here. Okay. All right, just keep painting his shirt right up to the line where his overalls touch. All right, I'm painting on the sides like I usually do because I like it to look professional. All right, so I've got that. I'm gonna do inside. So this is where you'll be able to see his shirt through the coveralls. All right, I'm gonna go. If you need to use your fine liner brush for this part, that's okay, because these little corners are hard to get into. You can kind of turn your brush sideways to get it if you need to. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, just go ahead and use your fine liner. All right, now time for the last sleeve. Okay. All right, so we're gonna paint over this. Come right up to the line. You don't want to leave any white space. You want it to go right up to the line of the gray. Alright, we're just painting right over this. Again, some of these lines that we're painting over, like the sleeve line here, the cuff, we're painting over that. It's just really to give us a general idea of where that cuff is going to be and that it's going to be rounded. We'll add it back in a little bit once we add the black, but we'll do that when we get to it. Okay, we're almost done with this. Oops. And if you go out too far like I did, that's okay. Just smooth it out. There's no such thing as a mistake in the art world, for the most part. You can always fix it, paint over something, or just change it. Whatever you do, if you have to use your imagination to get creative, that's good too. Alright, so we mostly got that. What I'm going to do for the next step, I'm going to add just a touch of some white to the tan paint. So this is where I'm going to use my mixing plate. Alright, I'm going to rinse off my brush and I'll put the white on my plate first. And the reason for that is because I don't want to get any of that tan color in the white paint that I have here. Alright, we're going to give this Scarecrow some highlights, alright, where the light reflects. So we've got some white here, alright, and we've got some tan here. I'm going to mix it up. All right, maybe a touch more. All right, we're just going to mix this. This is what this plate is for. If you think it's too tan or too white, you can add or change a little bit of whatever. I'm going to add a little bit more white and a little bit more tan, so I have enough for this next step. All right. Alright, so I'm just mixing this up. Alright, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're just going to add some highlights to his face and his arm. Alright, so over here, wherever you think the light would hit. And we can do this while the paint is still wet. A lot of times you can't. Alright, but this time we can. Alright, so kind of trying to go around where I think some light might hit. Alright, if it looks weird right now, it's okay. Just keep in mind that when paint dries, it looks slightly different. So if it looks weird now, when it dries, it'll look a little bit better. So don't freak out if it doesn't look exactly the way that you want it. Alright, we're going to add a little bit more. I like the highlight on his face. I think it makes him look like he's in the sun. Alright, and we'll add that over here where it hits his shoulder. Alright, now I'm going to kind of curve it with his shoulder. And with the curve of his arm. That way you can see the bending in his arm. It makes it look more realistic. Right, again, we're still using the flat brush for this. It's going to give us the best coverage for this part. Okay, I think we're pretty much good with that. I'm going to add a little bit of highlight here because his handkerchief around his neck probably casts a little bit of a shadow right here. So I'm mostly just going to put the highlight in this lower corner and maybe a little bit here where the light's going to hit on his arm. Okay. Can kind of curve it with his arm for a more realistic look. Alright, so I'm rinsing off my brush. We'll come back to the tan later on when we add the straw to him. Alright, but for now we're going to cease with the tan. Alright. Let's see, the next step we should do is the hat and the overalls, but we want to make sure that he's dry because we don't want to pull this tan into the blue. This will dry pretty quickly. The face is pretty much almost dry. The original paint that we put on is pretty much dry, so I'm just going to blow dry it real quick. All right. So it's not 100% dry, but it's mostly dry, and it's pretty much dry in the spots that we need it to be dry. So right now, for this step, I'm going to add the blue, all right, to his hat. All right, so we are going to get the general shape, all right, and we can just paint right over wherever we messed up with the gray. If we went over the line, we'll just paint right over that. Okay, we're still using the flat brush. Alright, so this will definitely look streaky at this point, and that's okay because it gives us kind of a nice old rough feel to it because he's probably been out in the field for a while, waving at all the birds that are eating the food in the garden. And he's not doing his job. But we're also going to add some highlights and lowlights to his hat, and this will kind of change the dynamics of the hat anyways. So those weird streaks that you see that you might not like right now, it'll look different in a second. If you need to use your fine liner brush for those sharp points in the corner, that's fine. Alright. This brush has very hard bristles, so it's kind of good, but you can hear the noise scraping on the canvas, which is okay. Alright, so we've got the basic general outline. We'll just kind of smooth it in the direction of his hat to kind of give it a curve. Alright, we are going to add some black on this side and then some white on this side. But for this, I'm not even going to clean my brush. Alright, I'm going to dip it in the black. Alright, but I don't want a lot of black. Just a very small amount of black. I don't know if you can see it. Not a lot of black. Alright, and I'm only going to do the black on the left side of his hat, because there's usually a shadow on one side and usually light hits the other side. Wherever there's a shadow, there's going to probably be light on the opposite side. Alright, so if you go over a little bit, that's okay. Just kind of pull it in. Alright, we're going to do it up here too. And as you can see, it's starting to look a little bit better. It's looking kind of like a dirty old hat. Instead of a streaky blue hat, it's looking like a dirty old hat. And we're gonna put a little bit of black in here, all right, but we're gonna leave some lighter blue too. So don't cover up all this light blue over here. We want a little bit. All right, this is mostly gonna stay dark, and then this is gonna be a little bit light. Okay. Again, it will look different once it dries. If you want to extend the hat down a little bit, give it a little shadow, you can do that. You don't have to. I'm just straightening it out a little. Alright, so I'm rinsing my brush off. Alright, and I am going to kind of wait for that to dry before I add in any white. I'm going to move on to the overalls next. Alright, so we'll do the same basic blue again. Alright. Alright, so I loaded up my brush, just dragging down in the general vicinity. It's okay, it's not perfect right now. I'm going to perfect it. I'm just kind of spreading out some of the blue. Alright. I'm going to try to come up to his face, but be careful that you don't overlap too much. And let's see. I go right up to the edge. And curve it around to his armpit. Drag it down. Going around his bandana. It's okay if we overlap a little bit. Alright, back up to this. Alright, and just drag down. Alright, we're going to curve around. Just kind of pull it in. It's okay if it's not totally even, guys. again, there's going to be different highlights because this is a dirty old pair of overalls. Kind of curving it around here. You'll see it kind of gives it a little idea that there's straps on his overalls that he's going to have to button up. So we'll add a button to that a little bit later. Can't do it now because it's still wet. Alright, but in a second we will add the black to give it that dirty look like we did the hat. Alright, I'm just covering up the sides over here, guys. I like to do the sides to be more professional. You don't have to. My son. I'm so sorry that you have to hear those little noises. He likes to freak out over video games sometimes. Let's see. Alright, so we are going to add the black. Alright, and we're going to do it the same way that we did it to the hat. Okay, so just a little tiny bit like we did to the hat. Alright, a little bit, and we're just going to do it along the edges. Wherever there would be shadow. Probably more shadow on this side since the hat is covering him. The light is probably coming in from this way. Alright, so you always want to think about where the light's going to be. Alright, if it looks like a lot of black, just kind of extend it out a little bit, and you can use it in other spots. So like I'm going to pick up a little bit from here and move it over to like over here. Right, underneath his armpit. Okay, don't be afraid to make it look dirty, it's okay. This is just his coveralls that are dirty from being in the rain, in the wind, in the harsh sunlight. This guy's a hard worker. Alright, so that's pretty good on that part. Alright, so I'm rinsing my brush off. Alright, drying it off because I want to make sure it's dry. Alright. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I always try to think about what I can do next so I don't have to use my blow dryer when I'm on video because I know that it's a little loud. So next I'm going to do the eyes. We can kind of wait while that's drying. You just have to be careful not to set your hand in the wet paint. Alright, so I'm gonna, I will use the fine liner brush for this step because the eyes are a little smaller. It can be a little bit harder to get a perfect circle with the flat brush. Alright, so I'm going to, the face is dry, so I'm going to use my pinky to steady my hand. Alright, and I just picked up some white, and I'm just going around in a nice smooth oval shape. If you want to change the shape of his eyes, feel free. Everybody's got a right to be creative and change things if they want to. But if you want to make it like me, just follow these steps. Alright, so he's going to look a little weird until we get all the final details on, so don't worry if you're like, oh my gosh, this looks creepy. You know, he'll look creepy until he's complete. Alright, so I've got his eyes, pretty good shaped. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. Let's see, what should I do next? We could do the nose. We could do the nose orange. Rinsing off my brush, and I am going to use my brush for this step, or my fine liner brush. Alright, so drying it off. Okay, I'm going to get some orange paint. I'm going to paint his nose. Now I had kind of gone over the lines a little bit when I did this originally. You can make his nose thinner, longer, wider. rounder, whatever you want. I'm just gonna kind of do like a upside down candy corn shape kind of. But I'm gonna widen the base, the base of his nose just a little bit. All right, let's see. It's looking good. Gotta be careful where I put my finger. I don't want to pull any paint off of anything else. Alright. Alright, I like the shape of his nose. I'm going to rinse off my brush again. Alright, let's see, what can we do next? So, I think that next we should do the lines for his mouth. We might do a lot of rinsing and drying, and that's okay. Really, some of this can be done in different steps, but if you want to be sure of how to do it, just keep following these steps with me. Alright, so I've got my brush to a nice fine point. Alright, and I'm going to use the black paint. Alright, but I'm not going to put too much on my paintbrush. Okay. Okay, so for his mouth, we'll just do, you can kind of do it in whatever way you feel most comfortable. You can do longer lines, like kind of like a flat smile, or a wider smile. Oops, I got a little something on the end of my brush. If you get anything on your brush, you know, it's alright, just rinse off your brush and kind of start over. Okay, but we're gonna kind of do like little stitches for his mouth. Alright, you don't want to apply a lot of pressure. I accidentally applied a little bit too much pressure for this line right here. But that's alright, you can always, when it dries, you can paint over it if you want. I'm giving him a nice big smile because I like that he's so happy. Alright, and for the ends of his mouth, he's kind of got that cross stitch. Right, so we'll just make it look like a little cross, little plus sign. Alright, and at this point my eyes are almost dry, and you can kind of see a little bit, maybe not on the video, but in person you can kind of see a little bit where the lines were for the eyes, so we're just going to add those in. Alright. Well, we've already got the black out, it makes sense to do this. Okay. And the other eye. Okay. Now we can add little eyelids, like little lines around his eye. And we can add the little eyelashes. We're still waiting for the nose and, you know, some of the blue to dry. Actually, let's start over here. If you don't have a steady hand, be sure to set your arm and your hand only on parts of your painting that are dry. Okay. So I'm just going right around the top where his eyelids would be. His eyelid and his eyelashes. You can go around the whole eye if you want to. Alright, and then I'm just gonna do a couple curved little lines for his eyelashes. Okay. Be careful not to mess up any of your wet paint. gonna give him little tiny eyebrows. Okay, so he's got little tiny eyebrows. We will add in, we can add in some of the black around the edges. So he's got some black around the edge of his shirt, just to outline it. And around his overalls, we can kind of use the black to, like, you know, present the lines or wrinkles that might be in his shirt, you know, or to outline and show like where the overall strap might end or come around. Little shadow there. And we might have to go back in and add some more black lines anyways to his scarf once we get that in. Alright, but right now we're just getting some basic lines. Alright, this strap is dry now, so we can actually add a big black button, and we will we'll mix in some other things too, like the lines on the other arms. We'll add those. Alright, so I got that in. Here's the crease in his arm. Alright, so we're just doing that, and we're doing pretty fine. Alright, so we're going to make a line on under here. This will be kind of like a shadow, because that's where the part of the light doesn't hit. We'll come down there. Alright, so we have a pretty big button here. Kind of like it. It looks old-fashioned. Okay, we're going to do a little line around here. Maybe just a couple little lines where there might be some wrinkles in his clothes. Alright, you can really put these wherever you want to. They just add character to him. Okay. Alright. Now I think we'll add some white. We'll start off with the white in his hat, because his hat is pretty much dry now. So we'll use the white here. We're going to get, you know, a decent amount on the brush. It doesn't have to be like the fine tip like some of the other stuff that we've done. All right, we're just going to add just some little highlights wherever the light's going to be hitting. Okay. Alright, you don't have to go crazy on this step. You just want a little outline. Alright, and maybe put a little outline under here to emphasize his eyes. He's got some bright, cheery eyes, so we'll make him stand out. We'll put, ooh, I almost dipped my paintbrush in the tan. Alright, we'll add a little highlight here, because the sun's hitting there. A little bit here on the side of his mouth. Okay. We can get some on his shirt. Alright, kind of make it go and work with the lines of, you know, his shirt or his overalls. We'll add some blue or some white to his overalls in a second. Alright, but you can kind of curve it with that, because usually wherever there is light, there is dark, and vice versa. Usually. Alright. So let's see. My brush got a little dry, so it's not going on so smooth there, but we can just add a little bit of water, dip it back in the white paint. And there we go. That looks better. There we go. We can add some white to his overalls now. Probably more on this side, because this is the side where the light's hitting. around here. Okay, I think we have a good amount of white. You don't want to do too much. I'm rinsing off my brush now. Alright, and now, oh, almost forgot the white in his nose. His nose is still a little bit wet. The orange is still wet, so if you add like a thick amount of paint, you know, a good amount of paint, and put it on, it won't, there you go, see, it won't mix. It'll kind of, which is good. You don't want it to blend. We just want to kind of pull it down with the reflection of light. And I did forget to add a little bit of a black line around his nose. And see, this is the thing. Sometimes there are no clear-cut steps. All right, I'm just showing you how you can kind of go in and out of the moment. If you forget something, you don't need to stress, oh my gosh, I forgot the line around his nose. That can be added at any time. Okay. This is just kind of like a shadow. All right. Let's see, what can we do next? I think we should do the handkerchief next. So for this, we're going to use the flat brush. All right, and we're going to get a good amount of red paint. All right, we're just going to swipe it around his shirt, and it's okay if we overlap a little bit because I think it should kind of come up here. All right, and even if you make a big blob here, this is where the knot is going to be in his handkerchief over here. All right, so you can kind of make like a circle here, and we're going to drag down, all right, and around. All right. Go ahead and trace the outline of his handkerchief. You can use a fine liner brush if you feel more comfortable doing that. All right, and then we're just going to kind of sweep it in this rounded motion to give it kind of like a wrinkled look. Because it's wrinkled, it's, you know, wrapped around his neck, so it's going to be a little wrinkled. And then, let's see, so I got a nice glob of red paint here, and I'm just going to take my paintbrush and swoop it down like this. All right, and this is going to be the end of the handkerchief where it kind of comes off. You can make it as big or as small as you want it. All right, and I actually want to add just a little bit of lowlights and highlights. We can add a little bit over here, so you'll see actually my brush, because some of the blue is still a little bit wet, my brush kind of picked it up, and so you'll see kind of like a little streakiness in here. That actually looks kind of cool, all right, because his handkerchief is dirty. All right, so we got that. All right, I'm gonna rinse off my brush. That's the last that we're gonna need, the red. All right, we'll wait for that to dry before we add any black or white to that. We are almost done, guys. Next, we're gonna work on the flower on his hat. We'll use the fine liner brush for that. I would start off with, you could either start off with tan or yellow, or I'm sorry, orange or yellow. It doesn't matter which one. All right, and you just, if it's easier, you can start off with the circle in the middle so you kind of have a base to go on. Actually, that's what I'll do, because that way you'll have a base of what to make your petals around. So we'll do the tan. All right, and I'm going to do a tan circle right about here. Okay, this does not have to be perfect, right? But we got a tan circle. Rinse off your brush. Okay, you're gonna add just a touch of black. All right, not a whole heck of a lot. Alright, and we're just going to put it on the one side and kind of swirl it around. See how it makes this nice marbling effect because we put a good amount of tan in it. So I'm going to just kind of swirl it around, kind of gives it that marble. You don't want to swirl it around too much or you're pretty much just mixing up paint. Alright, but now we got a nice marbled effect. Alright, and because we did that first, it gives us a guideline for where we're going to put our petals. But at the same time, we got to be careful not to go too far into the paint or else we could kind of mess it up. So I'm going to start off with the orange. Alright. And we're going to do some orange petals here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't even have to be completely filled in with orange because we're going to add some yellow to it. Okay. Alright, you can make the petals as big or as thin as you want to. Alright, I figured that the petals more in the front will probably have a little bit more yellow. The petals on the right will have a little bit more yellow than the rest of the petals because the sun is hitting it. Alright. Again, the petals can be however you want them to be. Okay, last petal. Okay, you see it looks kind of streaky. That's okay. We will add in our yellow. So we rinsed off our brush, we're drying it. Alright, and now we're going to add in the yellow. Still, you want to get a good amount because it's kind of transparent, so you want to give it a nice streaky highlighted effect. Alright, you can add more on the petals to the right because that's where the light is hitting. Alright, and maybe just a little bit on the petals in the back because they're not going to get as much light as the ones in the back or in the front. Alright, we got some nice blended flower here. Okay, so that part is done. So now we could do, while we're waiting for the handkerchief to dry, we will do the straw. So we can do some of the tan colored straw. Alright, and we'll just add a little bit peeking out under here. You don't want to make it go over his hat, so just be careful not to go up too high in his hat. But if you do, it's okay because you can always paint over it. Alright, and again, the straw is sticking out everywhere. He's kind of looking like a, you know, kind of like he hasn't taken care of himself in a while. Alright, we'll do some over here. Okay, let's see, so we want to do a little bit of straw peeking out of his neck. Okay, sorry, my son's phone is going off. And let's see, let's add some straw in the hands. this is going to be very wispy because we want to make it look like he's waving. All right, so these will kind of be like kind of representations of his fingers, even though it's not really his fingers. All right, but just streak it out, make him look happy, make his little straw fingers like wispy. All right, and don't be afraid to add. We're gonna add some other colors over top of this. All right, I think we got a good amount there. Let's see. We're gonna add some yellow next. All right, so clean off your brush. Again, we're using the fine liner brush. Clean off your brush, dry it off. All right, get some yellow on your paintbrush. All right, it's okay if it looks like a lot. We're just going to gently, applying not a lot of pressure, we're just going to gently drag some strands of yellow. All right, again, your paint always looks different when it dries. All right, so if it looks weird right now, don't worry. If it looks like it's too bumpy or sticking up, don't worry. Once it dries, it's gonna look different. We're gonna have some, he's gonna have some hair peeking out over here, right above his nose, kind of like at his forehead. Maybe he's got bangs or something. All right. Okay, we're going to add some more colors in a second. All right, but let's get a little bit of yellow down here. We can't forget his neck straw. Okay, and now for his hand, we'll get some straw there. Okay, there we go. I think that looks good for that. All right, so rinse off your brush again. We'll add some orange next. All right, and then we'll add black after that. And by that point, we'll be able to add like black on the handkerchief. All right, so we're gonna do orange. I dried off my brush. I rinsed it off, dried it off, made sure it came to a point, and now I'm doing some orange paint. Be careful not to overlap on the hat. All right, we don't want to do a huge amount of orange because most straw is tan and yellow. We're just going to do a little orange for some contrast. All right, be careful not to stick your finger in wet paint. I have a tendency to do that. All right, I usually use my hand or my pinky to stabilize my hand because I don't have a very steady hand. So if you're anything like me, you probably don't use an easel. You might use the table or your other hand to steady yourself. Okay, almost done, guys. Okay. Alright, we will add black next. We are so close. This is looking so good. It's exciting. He looks so happy and cheery. Alright, what did I say next? Oh, black. Alright, so again, cleaned it, dried it, brought it to a point. Alright, got a little bit of black. Remember, black is more powerful than the rest of the colors, so you don't need a lot. Alright, just go ahead and we're just going to add a couple little lines. Alright, and this is, again, mostly for contrast and shadows. Contrast is a good thing. Don't be afraid to add some different colors. You know, lights and darks look good together. It makes the darks actually make the light stand out. So like when I was in school and I was learning how to draw, a lot of times I would be afraid to add too much darkness, too much shading. But it really, once I learned how to control it and how to add more, I gained more confidence, and it makes the lightness stand out. Alright, and we're almost done, guys. I love this Scarecrow. He makes me happy, he really does. Sorry to say that over and over again, guys. I just love to paint. Alright, let's see, what else do we want to do? Add a little bit of black to the top of this where there might be some shading around his neck. It's okay if it pulls some of the red. Black is deeper than red. Alright, I'll add a little bit under here. It's okay. Maybe a little bit around the tie. Alright. Okay, now I think the only last thing is a touch more of white. You can look at this. While you're looking at it, just decide, do I want to have any more highlights anywhere else? Do I want to have any more lowlights or shading anywhere else? We are going to add just a touch here because I didn't add much here. Alright, and maybe brighten these just a little bit around here. I didn't add the dots on the button. Alright. This is the end is where you always do your final touches to see what you might have missed, what you want to change. All right, so we're just kind of sitting back and looking at it. All right, and then I think all we have left is just a little touch. Oops, that might have been too much. There we go. Guys, I think we are done. So it's up to you if you want to sign your picture. But I highly recommend you do, and I highly recommend you hang and display your pictures. It's always good to be proud of your artwork. I'm going to sign mine, and probably, I don't know, maybe just black. It's just easier probably. But yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed painting this, I would love to see your finished results. Feel free to share them in a review or even send them to me in a message. I would love to be able to maybe display them. I can do it without revealing any names, but I just like to see the finished results, if anything. But I would love to get a review from you. It really helps me grow. Feel free to please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel. All of my videos for my kits are private. They're set to private so that way only people that purchase a kit can view the tutorials for them. But I do have other videos that are public, and they would be really fun to do on a night where you're bored and just looking to paint a little and practice. So thanks so much for painting with me. I would love to see your paintings. Thank you very much. Have a good day.